Lolita, Texas is an unincorporated town in Jackson County, Texas. It is only 15 miles away from the county seat of Etna and is in fact not that far from two ghost towns, being Red Bluff and Texana. The location of the town was originally settled 2 miles north of the trading post that Philip Dimmitt, an early pioneer in the state, had in 1830, and is actually 4 miles south of where Texana used to exist and what is now Lake Texana in Jackson County. There doesn't seem to be any information on what the town was originally called when it was a trade settlement, and I can only assume that there wasn't any name. Technically, the area was first settled in 1840, according to entries from the Texas State Handbook Association. In 1909, a town site was laid out, and the area was called Lolita, after Lolita Reese, who was a granddaughter of a Texas Revolution veteran named Charles Keller Reese. Later on, the St. Louis, Brownsville, and Mexico Railroad created a railroad switch, which gave the town a post office, a store, and a cotton gin. This railroad would be the reason that nearby Red Bluff would soon become a ghost town. According to Texas Escapes, development in the town didn't start until 1880, when the Mitchell Ranch was fenced with the first barbed wire ever used in the county. According to a comment from an Isaac Newton Mitchell V, much of the population was there because of the cotton gin and oil field drilling activity. At some point, the gin was converted to a brick factory, which then later closed down. This man's grandmother also donated the land for the school. In 1910, the Lolita and Red Bluff school districts split, and most of the businesses moved to Lolita. By the end of World War II, the town had 5 stores and a population of 200. In 1969, it grew to 462, but then it dropped to 300 in 1988. In 1990, the population was still about 300, then it grew to 548 in 2000, and then it also grew to 555 in 2010. The town went into panic because of the novel Lolita, which is a controversial book where a man has an obsession with a teenage girl. The name of the book became synonymous with forbidden behavior, which saddened the postmaster because the Lolita that the town was named after was a lovely girl. The church deacon, R.T. Walker, decided that the name of the town was besmirched and created a petition that asked the government to take action in what he saw as a veritable nuclear attack against American morals as well as an affront to the town. There seems to be nothing that happened with the petition and no information that ever came out of it. In modern times, those that live in Lolita send their children to the schools in the industrial school district, which is coveted by some in the area. There does not seem to be any information that reveals when the Lolita High School was originally created, though there are archived news clippings dating all the way back to 1936. In the previous comment from Isaac Mitchell, he stated that he had gone to the school in the 1940s. He stated that when he went, he studied at the 2-story tan brick building, which was the original building. When it was built, there was a covered walkway between the 2 main buildings that existed. The original tan 2-story building was torn down sometime after 1950. Besides his comment, there does not seem to be any information describing these 2 original buildings. In a 1942 news clipping, there was indication of the 2 schools in Lolita, which I suppose must have been the formation that Mitchell was talking about. So this is a post-recording, edit, or recording, whatever you want to call it, where I went to a library and I found a book that actually talks about this very small town very, very briefly. So I'm going to read off essentially what it says. Where in a very old book called The Cavalcade of Jackson County, It describes the separation of the Lolita and Red Bluff school districts briefly. The author of the book wrote that the first school in Lolita was built in 1910 on an acre of land donated by a man named C.S. Mitchell. The first school was a one-room building made of wood, serving the school district until 1914. Afterwards, the progressive citizens voted on a bond issue of $8,000 and built the quote-unquote present building. I assume that this is the school that is currently seen today. In the book, it stated that in 1935, the school had become so badly dilapidated that it had to be remodeled. An election was held to vote bonds to repair and modernize the old school, and bonds of $6,000 and $7,727 were used to fix the school. The completion was finished on January 1st, 1937. At the time that this book called Cavalcade of Jackson County was published, it was 1938. Now, I still have a question about the current building that is still around today, because if this is the same school, then that would mean it's been around for over 100 years. And yet on the front doors of where the school used to be, there is an emblem or engraving, whatever you want to call it, on the very top that says 1944. So I don't know if they made that emblem in 1944 or if this is potentially a whole nother school. The Lolita High School used to be referred to as the Lolita LaWard High School. LaWard is another town in Jackson County in close proximity to Lolita. It too had a school that was partially torn down and is now abandoned. In a news clipping from 1948, there was a vote to consolidate the school districts between the close-by towns of Lolita, LaSalle, LaWard, Red Bluff, and Vanderbilt. This was when the industrial school district was essentially born. There is very little official information about the town and the school. It's one of those places that is nearly impossible to read about online. So the following information is going to be anecdotal from friends and family that I know that actually went to this school. The school in Lolita, after the mysterious second building was torn down, was known as the Lolita High School. The imprint is actually still there today, despite it spent most of its life as a middle school instead. Before the comment from Isaac Mitchell, I did not know that there was another building on the property, and it is unknown why it was torn down. It had to have been done so rather short into the lifespan, as I have not met anyone living today that even remembers such a thing. The only possibility I can think of for the second building is probably where the fire department is connected to it, since there's a walkway between the old school and the fire department, but beyond that I'm still completely unsure. The people that I know, though, that went there did so when it was a middle school. I'm unsure of when it became a middle school, though looking through official yearbooks at the Industrial High School in Vanderbilt, it seems that the school in Lolita seems to have made the change sometime in the mid-century. I assume the very late 50s, such as 1957 to 59, to the early 60s. When Lolita was changed to a middle school, a new high school was built in Vanderbilt, though, once again, I'm unsure of the exact year. The school in Lolita was used up until 2005, of which it had its last class. The school was closed down, and a new middle school was also built in Vanderbilt, because the old one had black mold. I am unsure what led to the school getting into this condition, unless it is much older than the records we can even read online. In the very least, it was at least 70 years old when taking into consideration the article from 1936. The Lolita school was then shut down forever, never to be used again, save for the fire department that is in a clean and safe building that is still attached to the old school. Since its closure, the school has been subject to tons of vandalism. With its exposure to the elements, the building is slowly rotting away, and the school district does not seem to care about it. I've seen doors broken open and window units that have just fallen to the ground because of disrepair. In 2018, I got curious and took some pictures of a few things I saw, though I did not go inside. What struck me as odd was when I looked through the broken windows and saw that when the school was abandoned, they left some things behind. This thought stuck with me, and I returned a few times in 2019 to take some more pictures, though not really venturing inside. I was pretty nervous to do so because people local to the area told me that the cops in Jackson County are very strict. Before COVID struck, I got the courage to go back once again and actually go inside the school. Despite knowing that this was dangerous, I was just so curious to see what it really looked like inside. The previous times that I went, I had stepped inside an open door, but didn't venture much farther than what were some locker rooms and what seemed to be a stage or a gym. I hightailed it out of there though, because it sounded like there was somebody already in there, because it sounded like to me I could hear creaking footsteps walking on the wood. When I arrived to finally snoop, I took some pictures of the building from the outside to show the disrepair. A white truck then pulled up to me, and I got kind of scared because I thought that it was a cop going to tell me that I was trespassing. Thankfully it wasn't, and instead it was a married couple that did item finding, namely in abandoned places. The wife told me that she had gone to the middle school in the 80s, and it was incredibly sad to see it the way it was now. They proceeded to do their thing, and I told them that I was going to go inside, feeling that if something happened to me, at least someone would know. I didn't have to break in or anything. In fact, vandals had already pried a door open. I simply stepped into an old classroom covered in dirt and mold, having suffered from years of exposure. The couple actually stepped inside with me, and we were all shocked that, in the least, the school had left behind some books. Because of the elements, though, these were unfortunately ruined. I stepped into a hallway and looked at the things that were left behind. Some of the things that I had seen in this hallway through the window a few years ago were gone, more than likely stolen. I was shocked to see trophies, though, that the school had won back in the 60s and 70s that were simply left behind in display cases. There were quite a lot of books left behind, and as tempted as I was to salvage some of them, I honestly didn't want to bring any mold into my home. Beyond that, majority of them were far beyond repair. I recorded majority of the footage with my phone since I was also using it for the flashlight. I can't explain why, but I was terrified of going in the bathrooms. The whole event was setting my anxiety off, though I just got this terrible feeling that I was going to find a dead body in the toilet. Thankfully I didn't, but I also didn't check every single toilet. I made my way into the girls' locker room. It was huge and freaky, but nothing was in there besides graffiti. Interestingly, there were still tampons in the dispenser unit. I walked into the gym, which seemed to double as the auditorium in its heyday. The roof was in horrible condition, and over the years, rain damage caused puddles to form in the wooden floor. I was horribly scared that I was going to fall through the floor, as I could feel the literal waves from how warped it all was. Underneath the bleachers, there were things once again left behind, including printer paper and Christmas decorations. I ventured into the main hallway and explored just about every room. Some were locked, though I don't really assume much to have been left in there. Though now that I think about it, why would an abandoned school have a locked room? Well, God. One interesting room to me was the old teacher's lounge. It was not really in bad shape and it had a lot of old books in it. I saw some from the 60s that were in really good condition. I left them there though. Before long, I was at the end of the hallway, which was blocked. The other side of it leads to the fire department. Understanding the size of the school, I realized that the Lolita Middle School wasn't abandoned because of the mold problems. It seemed to be more of an excuse or reason to build a bigger school. This is completely understandable though, because the population that goes to the school in the entire district is much larger than it was in 1936, especially for something that was designated as a high school only. I left after that, feeling relieved that it was over. I have not been back since, and thankfully my health is in good standing. People have told me that the school is haunted, though no one ever really told me why. I'm unsure of what ghost stories inhabit the old building, but I can tell you for sure that my anxiety was extremely heightened. As of 2021, the school still stands. There have been rumors that it would be demolished, but as far as I know, those are rumors only.